Hey guys, my name is Mysca and welcome to Overwatch Central. In today's video, I'm not going to be covering news, but I want to be covering something that has to do with the latest patch. And on Tuesday, I made a video covering the changes for the most part. One thing I kind of overlooked, or more like didn't mention there, was the knockback change. That was mostly because I didn't know how impactful it was going to be. I didn't really gauge how good it was for Lucio, and in addition to that, I just thought it was one of those changes that would go by kind of quietly. I've seen a couple of threads on Reddit here and there pointing out that some knockback things just feel different now, and when I was playing earlier, I wasn't sure if it was placebo effect or if it was actually happening, but I had several pretty frustrating situations, such as trying to dive a Junkrat and his mines knocking me back super far. I'm not sure if this was just an amazing Junkrat player, or if these concussion mines are just knocking Winston back a lot for some reason. To go into the knockback change more in particular, the wording is somewhat clear with what it does, with knockback distance is now more consistent, and heroes that are flying can now be knocked back and slowed. If you read the dev comment as well, it kind of says that the movement that you have as you are getting knocked back doesn't affect the knockback as much. So this means that Lucio's boops, for example, won't be affected as much, at least with the initial boop, if someone is moving towards you when you are booping them away from you, but you will still have the air control. And that's one of those things where I don't really know what is just placebo and what is actually a proper change here. I tried some things out in a custom game. I tried out Lucio boops and some Junkrats, just jumps and stuff with the concussion mines, and also throwing them at enemies just to see if there was a change that was notable. And honestly, it's pretty hard to tell. With Lucio though, you can see, for example, that Reinhardt and Tracer get knocked back an equal distance, which is pretty nuts in itself if you think about it. Reinhardt is quite a bit heavier and bigger than Tracer, but I think that type of change is totally fine. But it does really get me to think about CCing and booping against Reinhardt when I was playing earlier again as well, and I'm sure all Reinhardt mains have experienced this at some point. You have characters like Doomfist, Lucio, Hammond, and a bunch of other characters that knock you back in some way. There's quite a lot of CC and quite a lot of boops and such in the game. Again, all of these things are totally fine in terms of an actual change, but a lot of this kind of goes against what Overwatch is all about to some degree, and that's counterplay. Jeff has talked a lot, especially recently, about how Overwatch is a hero countering game, and they've always wanted that. They want people to be freely able to switch between characters to counter other characters and compositions, and they want abilities and such to be able to counter each other, to have it be more of a dynamic experience. And this is what, as Winston and Reinhardt, just currently doesn't shine through very well to me. If I want to have a fun game of Overwatch right now, I feel like I kind of have to play Orisa and Hammond and such instead of playing Reinhardt and Winston. And I know that there's a lot of main tanks out there. I know there's a lot of people playing Winston and Reinhardt that are kind of dealing with it, and it's kind of part of the experience. But to me, that kind of sucks that it's part of the experience. And if you think back on it, Doomfist and Hammond were both not in the game at launch. You also didn't have Brigitte, especially not the first version of Brig and such, against Reinhardt that you had to deal with. And there were a lot of things that were very different with the game. But one thing that hasn't really changed is the tank role, and that's why at this point, playing main tank just isn't that fun for me anymore. I'm trying to play other things instead. It's a bit of a shitty feeling to have hundreds of hours like that, kind of feel like they're gone to waste in a way. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed that main tank playtime. But hey, at the end of the day, I'm just gonna play something else, find another hero that I like more, and work on that instead. But this is something that makes me ask that question of how much do these new characters affect it? How much have the knockback changes affected it? And overall, what is the main tank role really like there? And especially, how much does this core principle of hero countering, ability countering, and team comp countering in Overwatch really shine through? The devs keep saying it's a big focus for them, but at the same time, we get stuck with these compositions that seem uncounterable. This is potentially just a core flaw with the game, because no game is perfect. I just really wish I had some counterplay there. Even if it was something that was very difficult to do with Winston, it's not really as much of a problem there, but especially with Reinhardt, if I just had something that made that whole experience more bearable. Something that sometimes could help me in those situations. Because all of that currently combined with a very heavy amount of heals in Overwatch, and DPS characters being the main burst damage heroes, makes the tank role feel a little bit lost. And I'm so happy that we've ended up at a point where the damage role actually feels pretty balanced overall. The support role as well, I feel like, is pretty well rounded all around. But the tank role just feels like a fucking mess, honestly. So I think for now, I'm just gonna switch over to support or something, or play other tanks. But I wanted to get this off my chest because I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, hey, is this just me, or is this actually a thing? Alright, that was everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a little bit rambly and ranty, but I really wanted to get this off my chest because I also feel like it's one of those things that a lot of people might be getting annoyed at but not really talking about too much because you just kind of take it for granted. Anyway, that's all. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys around.